tradition this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page. And love and tradition of the grand design, some people say is even harder to find.
Here we are, end of the first quarter of 2024. We're in April, and we got a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, not only in our real estate market here locally, but also some nationwide changes that are coming over the summer. So I'm going to jump in with inventory because, you know, this is the time of year where things start to get busy, right? Inventory increases a little bit. You know, buyers are out in full force, and you guys can kind of talk about that, as I know you're putting a lot of buyers into contract. But I will get into it right away. Santa Clara County, single-family homes, 514 on the market, right? So we're still kind of hovering around 500. As we talk about every week, I mean, it's not a lot of homes, right? We've got 1.9 or so million in people in the county and only about 514 homes for sale. Compare that to Austin, right? Because, and the reason why I do that is because we are similar in size in terms of population. That market right now has somewhere between 3,500 to 4,000 homes on the market. So, you know, because of this, we are seeing prices go up. The other thing to mention that's noteworthy for single family homes, pendings have shot up. Right now we have 746 pendings, which means we only have about 2.5-3 weeks worth of inventory. Now, because of those things, it leads to a headline that I saw in the Mercury News last week, which is the median price of single family homes in February versus February of last year, 2023, has shot up 22.6%. And I think we're seeing that in terms of the amount of money that we're having to offer on homes to get them into contract.
Buyer fatigue is kicking in again.
Are you starting to see buyer fatigue?
Well, it's kind
tapping
of
out.
It's kind of just like during COVID. There comes a point. I mean, we wrote an offer last week. Us and 5 other offers within $50,000 of each other. Last offer that came in, $125,000 over. And it's like you're in that market for so long, looking in the same pocket for so long. When is your breaking point as a buyer?
Yeah.
And that's what I think we're starting to see again.
Exactly. Are you seeing that too, Jeet? Are you seeing buyers tap out and say, hey, we're just going to wait. It's too hot. It's too crazy.
Yeah. In fact, one of the recent closings I had, that my clients told me, if this house doesn't work out, we're going to wait until the end of the year. It's just because, you know, they're having a baby and like they're just sick of writing offers because it's so taxing, right? Mm-hmm. The whole situation.
It's stressful.
It's stressful. On top of their full-time job, this becomes another job, mm-hmm. right? Like looking at properties, reviewing disclosures, writing offers, and then finding out there's 20 other people that want it, right?
Sure.
And luckily, we got that property. We beat 20 offers and we just closed last week. But if that didn't work out, I think my clients would be on the sidelines waiting. And it's because they already lost 4 to 5 offers. They were in that position where like, okay, you know what? Let's pay a little bit more than what we think it's worth. Let's secure it so that the next home the other 19 buyers can go shopping for, right?
Yeah,
and
the average sales price last month in Santa Clara County for a single family home was $2.28 million for the average home. So almost $2.3 million.
And you said that's last month?
Yeah.
Because the month before, February, it was $175,000.
Well, I think you're thinking median price.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So median price is about 1.7, but the average price, which is a better indication of, you know, kind of where things are at, average price is just under $2.3 million.
That's insane.
At 6.5% interest rates or whatever it is right now.
Exactly.
So it just goes to show our area, you know, is really insulated compared to a lot of places across the United States, because what I'm hearing from other agents that we network with nationwide is that, you know, we have inventory. It is slowing down. You know, they're not seeing multiple offers. They're seeing more price reductions. In fact, in our market, we only have about 10% of the properties, you know, on a monthly basis that are actually reducing their price. You know, the other 90% are selling at asking price or above. In fact, right now we're averaging about 7% above asking price across the board countywide.
That's crazy. I mean, so we started the year at 310 homes. Mm-hmm. Yesterday was the beginning of Q2, April 1st. We're at 540.
514.
So by the end of 2024, do you see what is that, 200? Do you see us getting close to 1,000 by the end of the year? Or are
No,
we going to
no,
see
because
a
it'll
drop
always
off?
go down at the end of the year because of the holidays. So the peak will be around June, July, and maybe we'll hit 700, and that's it. But I mean, look, there's 746 pending right now, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
The government or the counties or the cities or whoever you want to blame has made it so unadvantageous to sell when you have over $1 million of equity.
Well, yeah, there's the capital gains issue, which we've
Like
talked
I just
about.
had clients call me. They're like, "I owe $400,000." I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "I don't have $400,000." It's like no one even tells you.
Yeah. Well, we do. We always tell our clients to consult a tax professional.
I guess like
They must have forgot or didn't hear you when you told them to say that, because
Besides
we
us.
always tell.
But there's no like clear cut number like, oh, shit, on $1 million I'm gonna owe 400.
Can you explain what transferring the property taxes mean for certain age groups in California? I know there's that bill that's out there where you can take your property tax and transfer it. I've had multiple questions come up, and there's not a whole lot of clarity, I think, on that.
Sure.
Prop 19.
Prop 19. So Prop 19 says if you are over the age of 55 years old, or there's some other caveats to that too, but basically for the average person, if you're over the age of 55 years old and you want to keep your low property tax base, you are allowed to transfer that to your next property. And basically you get up to $1 million exclusion on that. So the first $1 million, you're taxed at your old property tax rate. And then anything above $1 million, you're taxed at the current property tax rate,
Which
is
still is not helpful. It's helpful.
Well, it depends on where you go.
Well, I'll tell you
okay,
what.
here's a perfect
See,
situation.
this is why I brought
selling
this up.
for 1.8. Client wants to buy a $2.2 million one-story house, and with her payment right now is like $2,000. With everything, if she sells, moves up, boom, 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 her payment becomes $8,000 a month.
So I'll tell you what. Shout out to Chicago Title. They actually have a great Prop 19 calendar where you can put in the value of your property, the value of the new property, your tax rate, and it will calculate for you what your new property taxes will be by transferring with Prop 19, and actually it will tell you what they would be otherwise. So if you didn't use Prop 19, what your property taxes would be, so that way you're able to see the savings on that. So if anybody wants that calendar, they can reach out to me and I'll send them a link. Thank you, Kevin Barrett, Chicago Title.
It's great.
That's great. Hey, but going back to buyer fatigue before you dive in,
Yeah.
I think a lot of real estate agents struggle to keep their clients engaged because how many times do we know that the client that we're going to show the house to cannot afford it based on current market conditions? And a lot of agents aren't telling their client, hey, this is going to go way past our budget. If you see it, you're not going to be able to afford it. You're going to try for it. You're going to get emotionally attached to it. Then you're going to be exhausted and drained. Right? So I think now more than ever, your real estate agent needs to explain to you what's really going on. And so that if you, the buyer, don't see that, you're way less likely to fall in love with it than just staring at the photos online.
Well, yeah, and I think you bring up a great point. It's all about setting expectation, right? I mean, I just did a buyer consultation on Friday, and I told them, I said, hey, the price point you're looking at is about the most competitive price point in San Jose, which is entry-level home 1.3 to 1.5. And I told them, I said, get ready, because as good as we are, as connected as we are as a team, resourceful and all those things, it may take 4 or 5 times before we get an offer accepted. So I had to remind him, like, you're going to find out really quick that you're going to start to compromise on your checklist, because otherwise you're never going to get a house. And if you do find the one, you may not get it, because like Jeet said earlier, there could be 20 offers on the property. So yeah, setting that expectation, I think, does help with the buyer fatigue. But I don't blame buyers. It's tough out there.
Yeah, I mean, even as an agent, I don't think it's been harder to advise our clients as to what they should pay, right? Because it's like, how do you even come up with a range when there's no data that you can really rely on other than the interest and activity around the house, right?
Well, I think it goes back to, okay, what monthly payment are you comfortable with?
Exactly.
Right? Because like you said, there isn't necessarily a rhyme or reason, because market value is based on what a buyer's willing to pay at any given time. Exactly. And there are some buyers, like you said, that are tired, and I'll throw an extra $100,000 more than I wanted to because I'm going to stay in this house for 10 years. And as we know now, in San Jose and most of Santa Clara County, the average person's staying in their home for 17 years before they move.
Exactly.
And as a buyer, I feel like it's your job to put in your highest and best offer compared to what you're comfortable with. But again, you can't, the goal is to get a response back. It's very unlikely in this market, unless you're 200 grand over the next person, to just get accepted immediately. Counter offers back, verbal counter offers back. At least you're putting your buyer in the driver's seat to make that final decision. But unless they truly are serious, yeah, that conversation of the price point has to happen.
Yeah, this isn't the time for buyers to say, well, let's just put
Lowball.
this amount. Yeah, let's just try it out. It doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah.
It absolutely does hurt.
It does hurt.
If you don't put your best foot forward, you may never get a second chance.
Well, and we're not going to get again, our job is to get that response back. But if we start coming in lowballing agents, they're not going to give us the respect as a buyer's agent or that word back of where we need to be. At least when we come in and they know we're serious, whether we're close or not, at least we have that opportunity before either they accept or meet to at least resubmit or, put your next best foot forward.
Exactly. The goal is to be top 3 so that you get that fair shot of, at least competing for the house.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to segue a little bit, and we'll probably spend the remainder of our time talking about this because I think it's something that's very important, not only to the real estate community, but also how buyers and sellers, move forward in purchasing or selling a home. And so I think, as a lot of people know, the National Association of Realtors, which we are all members of because we are required to by virtue of the multiple listing service that we're a part of that gets our properties out there. National Association of Realtors settled the class action lawsuit just recently for over $418 million or something like that. So, a significant amount of money. And the original intent, in my opinion, of that lawsuit was to make things more transparent in terms of commissions, right? And who's paying for what. And they felt, the intent was they felt that buyers were...
When you say they, you mean the sellers, right?
They the sellers, and more so the attorneys that brought forth the class action that will actually be benefiting from this. They felt that the sellers should not be forced to pay both sides of the commission, and it left things, kind of very, very vague for the consumer. Well, NAR has settled, and so out of that settlement, 2 major things, and then we'll dive into kind of what our thoughts are on that. The first major item is a seller can no longer offer buyer's agent compensation on the multiple listing service. So if you guys remember, 6 months, 9 months ago, Redfin, Zillow, the portals started sharing online how much the buyer's agent was going to be compensated. And I think that was a good thing because that is true transparency, right? Mm-hmm. We take a listing at 5%, we split it 50-50, and then it is published online what your buyer's agent is making for helping you through that transaction. Well, that's going away. Now, it doesn't mean that a seller cannot still offer compensation to the buyer's agent. It just can't be published on the MLS. So it means we can put it on our website. It means they can call us and we'll tell them what we're offering.
Private remarks.
No.
You can't say that the buyer's agent's being compensated in private remarks. You can put it down as seller concessions.
Has to be in like disclosure.
Seller concession.
Mm-hmm. So back to what I was saying. It can't be anywhere on the multiple listing service, but it can be everywhere else. It can be on our website. It can be on our flyers. It can be on our T-shirts when we're walking around, like Jeets VKG polo shirt.
Exactly. Sponsored by Nike.
Yeah, we
Nike.
we could advertise it, on carrier pigeons and airplanes. We just can't put it where the consumer at large gets to see it. So a little counterintuitive. The second big item that came out of that is moving forward. Before a real estate agent can show you a property in person, the buyer must sign what's called a buyer-broker agreement with that agent, which essentially says that buyer is committed contractually to working with that agent, and that agent is due compensation for that work. So whether it comes from the seller or comes from the buyer or some sort of hybrid of the both of those, before someone opens a door for you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you must sign a contract with a real estate agent or a buyer's agent. So those are the 2 big things that came out of it. My personal opinion, this is horrible for buyers. First of all, it's confusing, right? Agents are confused. A lot of agents are confused. Consumers are confused. Sellers think they don't have to pay any sort of compensation anymore to a buyer's agent, which, by the way, it's always been negotiable. They never actually had to. But you definitely want to make sure that your property is the most appealing property on the market, and the way to do that is to offer some sort of compensation to attract as many good buyer's agents as you can. So horrible for buyers, because now you have buyers that are probably going to have to pay more because a commission's just like another closing cost, right? And then the byproduct of that is buyers may say, well, I want to just pay a flat fee. I don't want to pay commission based. And so what's going to happen? They're going to end up working with unreliable agents that don't do a lot of transactions, and it's going to hurt the consumer all the way around.
Yeah, I think this. So commissions are basically becoming decoupled, right? So the buyers and the seller's agent is no longer no longer is the seller paying both of them, right? Or they may still opt to. It's just that it can't be advertised. I think this has caused more confusion than it solves any problems, right? I think it becomes it definitely hurts the consumer in the end, because I think the biggest issue that not a lot of people have really even realized is VA buyers, right? Like VA buyers cannot pay their agents. So with the 0% down
Also
payment
FHA.
program.
Although
Right.
I spoke to a lender, a friend of mine today who does a lot of FHA. There's actually an FHA product where they'll do like a 5% second mortgage, but it has to be FHA, and you can include buyer's agent's closing costs in there. But to Aaron's point, everyone's having to adjust to this. The other part that I didn't mention, judge still has to sign off on it, but it looks like they will, and it's going to go into effect mid-January. So I mean,
January or
out of-
July?
Sorry, thank you.
Mid-July.
That other J month. But mid-July of this year, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we've got about 90 days or 100 days or so before this takes into effect. And so, it's interesting. You see all the clickbait news. It's on Good Morning America and all these other things about, real estate commissions will never be the same, and this is going to help buyers. And, ultimately, I think it's going to have the opposite effect, because sellers are still going to want the most for their home.
Exactly.
Right?
They're not gonna be like, oh, my neighbor sold for $1 million but paid their buyer's agent. I'm not gonna offer buyer's agent fee, so I can sell for $975. That's just not gonna happen.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So the buyers are going to be impacted the most, because not only are they now going to be on the hook for some or all of the buyer's agent's commissions, but like I said, buyer reaches out on Zillow, right? And then the Zillow agent says, okay, well, I'll show you that, by the way, it's not a Zillow agent. It is an agent that pays to be on the Zillow platform. And guess what? Zillow will take any agent that's willing to pay to be on the platform. So it doesn't matter if you sold one house or 100 houses, you're going to get some random agent, and then they're going to meet you at the door and say, hey, sign this contract. And guess what? You have to work with me for the next 6 months. And if the seller doesn't pay a commission, guess what? You have to pay. So now that buyer has to pay full price in a market where we're, average price point at 2.3 million, multiple offers. And now they're going to be stuck with additional closing costs.
Exactly. I think one of the things I really liked, especially with like the online leads that we work with, is like the first house we meet at, or we meet at the office. It's mostly at the first house, and we meet there, and I can take them through that. I can talk about the process. I can show value, and then it builds some rapport to move forward with our relationship. Right. It's always been like not binding. Like if
Right.
I've always dealt like, hey, if they want to work with me, they will work with me because of the value I provide. And if they don't think we are a good fit, they're happy to work with someone else.
Yeah, the buyer broker agreement that they're going to be forced to sign has actually been in place, for a long time within our organization, especially in the state of California. But we as a team, to Jeet's point, we've never enforced that, because we believe we provide enough value that we don't need to have a written contract in place for that person to work with us.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so this is my thought, and I'm speaking directly to my buyers too. I mean, this is how serious it's going to be in the next 90 days. Like, you are going to need a buyer's agent like us who knows exactly how to actually get a home, lock a home in, and do their job properly. All this stuff on the news about going with a discount agent, they're not going to know the agent on the other side, especially in a market where inventory is this low. You need to have a connection on the other side to even get a foot into the door. You go with a discount agent, that's not going to happen, and they're definitely not going to fight for your commissions. I will say this to my buyers: you will not have to pay me commission. I will fight for your commission. We will make this happen in a way to where, whether it's the price point is worked in to get that commission from the sell side, but there's not going to be ever a chance or a point where I think I'm going to have a buyer pay me 2.5%. I'm either going to discount myself to make sure that buyer gets in, or we're going to fight for that seller to get it.
On this day,
all right, Jake.
No, yeah, you can mark that. I don't care. For the buyers who think they're going to go with an attorney, think about this.
Well, no, that's not realistic.
None of my buyers seem to give a shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. None of my buyers care until I think it comes down to them signing it. But the contract that I feel like is going to benefit us is going to be like a PED. I don't think that us signing a contract for 6 months is going to be as valuable in a discussion with our buyers and saying, listen, you're going to sign a contract with me for this address. If we go to another address, we'll sign a one-time contract for this address. I think there's certain ways to put buyers in a position where they still do feel comfortable, but it's all going to be about how we converse that to them, how we benefit from them working with us, what our value is. And I think if the agents don't know how to converse that, that's when I think there's going to be a lot of issues with suing people, emotions. You're going to get buyers that flake, go to someone else. I think the contract and how that's written is going to be massive in 30 days. And I don't think it's on a 6-month time frame. I think that's going to hurt a lot of buyers. I think that's going to put them in a very stressful situation.
The speculation around this whole lawsuit it enamors me a little bit. Everything is going to end up being a case-by-case basis, right? If you're a seller, you don't want to be the industry leader of not paying buyer's agent commission. Generally speaking, you're going to want to offer out 2.5%. That's just what we recommend as a team. If someone is not doing that and you are working with us as a buyer, we'll figure it out together, right? No one here is trying to put you in a spot where you're paying us $50,000 directly,
exactly.
Right? So for agents to just come on here, not hear the podcast, but just online and just go to full panic mode doesn't make sense, right? Every massive industry has some sort of big disruption over the course of their time and their career, and it's a disruption, but ultimately it's going to be totally okay. And I'd be willing to bet, and I talked with David for a while about it, I would say this time next year it's almost going to be back to square one of, hey, this is kind of normal what to pay out. If you don't want to pay out the normal, here's your other options, and so on and so forth. But it's gonna be great.
I think the way to go about this from this point onwards would be to actually have consultations or have like a pricing option, right? Like the main issue with this lawsuit was transparency, right? So we can bring that back by saying, how we in listing presentations would go like, commissions are negotiable, but here's what I charge, and this is what the buyer's agent gets paid. So now when we do buyer consultations, we'll be like, here's everything we do, here's how I'm going to help you, and here's how I get paid, right? Option 1, option 2, option 3. Last option is you pay me, right? But that would be the very last resort of our situation, right? My first and foremost effort would be to get it from the seller.
Yeah, but ultimately, buyers need to know that they're not unique. All buyers across the entire United States are in the same boat.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
that boat though is on a bunch of different waves. I mean, the boat in Dallas, Texas, you can pay your buyer's agent $3,000.
Just back everything up to where we started. The end goal of this whole lawsuit was to bring down prices, right? To make it more transparent. And theoretically, they said it's going to bring down home prices. I think it's going to bring up home prices because people are going to be charging this, that, and the other.
Well, if nothing else, it's going to increase buyers' closing costs.
I mean, buyers, I feel like, are already at their max on some of the homes that they buy. Like, they're wiping out as much money as they have in their accounts. So, again, and I've spoken to a couple lenders, they can't lend on what they have to pay the commission.
Trust me, there'll be a lot of that will change between now and July.
Before, I guess I didn't really use one, but you probably did, respectfully. Did you ever use a travel agent? Did you ever see that being phased out? Are we going to be the next travel agent?
I used the travel agent, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. They're still in business in Los Gatos because the good ones, right, that serve a clientele that appreciates the value, absolutely. And best trip of my life, Italy, and all up and down Italy. I would not have been able to navigate that on my own easily. So you pay a travel agent a little bit of money, what they're worth, and had a great time.
Did you pay that travel agent based on the services they provided or a percentage of the total trip?
No clue.
Okay.
I need a NAR settlement to help me figure out how I paid my travel agent.
Transparency.
But to that point, I do not use Expedia. I hate Expedia. The customer service is horrible. Sure, I might save $10 on a hotel room, but what I'll do is I'll go look at Expedia and I'll see the hotels that are available, and then I'll just go directly to the hotel.
That's what I do. Also, you're much more likely to get your room upgraded.
Absolutely.
Because they don't have to pay all the extra services.
And it's easier to cancel and modify all that stuff.
Okay, so perfect to what you just said.
Yeah.
This is devil's advocate. Why wouldn't the buyer just go directly to the listing agent?
Yeah, so we call that dual agency, right? Double ending a transaction. So I think we will see an increase on that, right? Because of misinformation. Because buyers think, well, if I go directly to the listing agent, I don't have to pay an agent. Which, again, back to your point, not necessarily true, because I still think that 70% plus of sellers will still offer some sort of compensation to the buyer, maybe even higher percentage of that. But because of the misconception, buyers, I think, will be more inclined to go directly to the listing agent, right? Which means we're going to have busier open houses and all of those things. The downside to that is that it's hard for an agent to properly represent both sides, because how do you represent the seller's interest and the buyer's interest at the same time? With the exception of, hey, you got two people that want to do a deal, but the seller's trying to get the most amount of money that they can. The buyer's trying to, save where they can and not overpay for a property. So again, who loses in that? Probably the buyer, because they don't get adequate representation.
Because the seller's agent's end goal, if they don't sell the house at all, they get nothing. So naturally, you're going to have the seller's best interest.
Yep.
And guess what? They're still going to get paid from the seller.
Yeah. So, we don't recommend buyers go directly to the listing agent. You don't, and I think I said this on a prior podcast or something. It's like, say you trip and fall at a Walmart and you get injured and you want to sue them, right, for legitimate damages. And, before July 15th of this year, Walmart says, hey, guess what? We're going to have an attorney and we're going to pay for your attorney. And guess what? You can pick any attorney you want. You can pick the best attorney, the worst attorney, most experienced, least experienced, but we'll pay. We'll cover 100% of those costs. July 15th of this year rolls around and Walmart says, well, guess what? Now you got to pay for your own attorney. And you're already injured, you're not working, you don't have a lot of money, so you might get a discount attorney. You might have and so, I kind of equated to that, where before a seller was saying, hey, we're going to give out 2.5% to any agent that brings a buyer, and that buyer gets to choose the agent that they want with the qualifications that they want, and they're not going to have the burden of paying for that agent. Just like when that seller bought that house. They didn't have to pay, right? So it's kind of like you're just passing along to them, the same benefit that those sellers got when they purchased the home, they're passing on to the buyers of their new home.
Pay it forward model.
Yeah, it is. It's pay it forward model, and now that's changing. So are we worried? No. But it's interesting to see, what goes on out there. And a reminder to everybody, in our market, we have about 13,000 agents, right? And so there's about, just say 1,500 deals a month that happen in our marketplace. So, 90% of the agents in our marketplace don't get a paycheck on a regular basis. They're scared, they're strapped for cash, they're desperate, they'll do anything to get a deal, right? Discount agents sometimes. And so it's they're the ones I think that are really, really freaking out, or ones that don't have balanced business. We have all of us here have listings. We represent sellers and buyers. So, ultimately we're going to be fine. I think the good agents will continue to do well because they look for opportunities, right? They look for solutions instead of excuses. So I'm excited to see what happens. I'm hopeful that a lot of agents will leave the industry, because then the average agent will be better, will be elevated, right? So all those people that are doing it part-time, and no knock on them, but part-time agents or agents that only do, a deal or two a year, that maybe don't have to do it to provide for their families. Like, those people can just go do something else. And I hope that it elevates the average experience and intelligence of the agent population that we have here.
Yeah, I think the biggest myth out of this is like home prices will go down, right? Like no matter what advertisement media you look at, some people say sellers will have more money to bring to their next house. The other people say buyers will have to pay less. And I think the real what will happen will be only once it comes into effect and a few transactions go through a really good experience or really horrible experience that becomes a norm.
Yeah,
right? And as you said, by next time this year, I think we'll all be back to normal.
So 5 years from now, there's the short term, and then 5 years from now, what is it?
Yeah,
5 years from now, what does it look like?
Well, I think 5 years from now, I think there will be continued compression on commissions, right? Think about it this way. NAR, realtors, been around 100 or so years. Over the course of 100 years, the commission has more or less stayed the same, 5 to 6%, right? I think this will be the first wave in what will continue to compress commissions in our marketplace. And that's okay too. So 5 years from now, I think if right now average commission total on a transaction is 5%, I think 5 years from now it's probably 4%, somewhere around there.
But that's also fair. I mean, with prices going up, I think compensations will increase. Like that 2% will be more than what the 2.5% is right now, right?
Yeah.
Like when home prices were 500,000, we were getting 3%, right? Now it's $1 million, it's 2.5.
Yeah, and again, the sad part is anybody can get a real estate license, right? The barrier to entry is so low, and we are handling, $2, $3, $5, $10 million homes, and so our ability to market and negotiate properties generates our sellers more money than they would if they hired somebody else, right? We are masters at getting the most money out of our listings. We don't leave a dollar on the table for our clients. And so I think in a lot of ways that 2.5%, although if you look at it, just on a piece of paper, it may look like a lot of money, but if you look at the amount of money that we have generated for our clients above and beyond what they would have got if they didn't fix up the property, if they didn't stage, if they didn't have the photography and paid social advertising that we do and all those other things that help generate and push that up. I mean, I do think in most cases we more than cover the cost of our compensation.
I agree. There's no doubt in my mind that just driving the list price up based on having multiple offers covers it right there. I have two random things.
All right, we'll wrap it up with your two random things.
Have you, Ben heard this yesterday, but David and Jeet.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of a dink house? D-I-N-K?
Yes.
No.
Have you?
No.
What does it stand for?
Dual income, no kids.
My client and I were in East San Jose Foothills. She goes, "Oh my God, this is a perfect dink house." And I was like, "Oh my God, she hates it." And she's like, "No, dual income, no kids. I love it."
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of cute, kind of cool. And then my last thing is a PSA.
Which stands for?
Public service announcment.
You're supposed to ask Jeet if you knew what that
Jeet,
stood
do you
for.
know what that means?
Yeah, public service announcement. I
He
just
knows now.
learned.
Did you know before?
Yeah.
How about PS? P.S.
Please see. I don't know. Why? Like
Like at the end of an email. P.S. Don't forget, whatever.
Oh, I have no idea.
It's like an older term.
What is it?
What is it, Ben?
Please see.
That's what I was gonna say.
I was hoping you knew.
No one knows.
What does it mean, G?
We gotta Google
I
it.
don't know what it means. It just means that you're adding the extra thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please
it's-
see?
Please see. I think it's
Plus
please,
sentence.
Please see.
That's what I
Oh,
thought.
postscript.
Post.
Oh.
Anyways.
Should have just said
So my
please see.
PSA
Is
that everyone in this business, as real estate agents, competes against each other, generally speaking,
Sure.
for listings. We had a recent situation last week where I was the favorite candidate. There was 5 people that were being interviewed, and unfortunately I got a phone call a couple days back saying that I wasn't going to get it. And when I asked why, I was told that the marketing that this person does is superior to ours and that she had much higher accolades than I did. And so I went to this person's website, and she says that she is the #1 real estate agent in San Jose. And I would just like to put it out there that there are ways that you can fact check what real estate agents are putting out on their websites or on their marketing. Real Trends is a great one. Homes.com, I think, tracks everything. Realtor.com tracks your
Zillow
sales.
tracks sales.
Zillow tracks it. So it's really unfortunate because I did think I was a much better fit than this older woman who is probably not that good of a fit and probably misled the sellers. So I just want to put it out there. Fact check your people. I don't mean to be rude, but I do because she was kind of rude to me.
Yeah, and that's actually a great public service announcement because unfortunately, agents often say whatever they want. I'm top 1%. I'm, rookie of the year. I'm the #1 buyer's agent. I'm the top listing agent in a specific neighborhood.
I did some of this. Hey, but mine are verified.
And that's the thing, right? What's funny is that we all know who the top agents are. And I know the agent that you are speaking of, and they do business.
Non-identified, non-binary, does business. They do business.
But I do believe
but not #1.
I do believe they grossly exaggerated the stats that are currently on their website.
From 2009 to 2023.
Yeah.
Please.
But the cool thing is you could send out a flyer to that entire area.
No, I already have it made.
Yeah.
I am going to fix the transparency.
Yeah, and you could, through education, right? You could say, dear consumer, if you're interviewing an agent to buy or sell a home and they say they are the best at XYZ, let me give you some ways and avenues that you can check that for yourself. And ultimately, can you imagine starting off a relationship being misled by the person that you're going to pay to do this job? I mean, if they found out about that, it bugs me that agents to this day do that. Like neighborhood expert, top agent in San Jose. I mean, come on. You're
#1 in this business doesn't mean anything other than that they have the most sales. But they could have a team of 20 people behind them.
Well, yeah. Or if I say I'm #1 in San Jose, is that #1 in listing side transactions? Is that #1 in volume? Is that #1 in total sales?
#1 in my mom's heart.
Yeah, exactly. Which I am #1 in your mom's heart, by the way. But
she agrees.
Yeah, she does. But yeah, it can mean a lot of things, right? And so that vagueness and that ego, whatever. It's unfortunate that you lost that listing, because I think you would have done a better job.
Thank you.
I think you care more than that other person.
I do too.
Yeah.
They.
That.
Yep. All
Well,
right.
It's been fun.
Been a good one.
Hopefully we get paid 3 months from now.
Yeah, and 5 years from now, who knows? Maybe we'll be all working at a Starbucks and we can do a podcast from there. But until then, if you need to buy or sell, invest in real estate, feel free to reach out to one of us. All things real estate, we're out.